The story of Demetrius, Big Meech Flenory, is one that captures the darkest aspects of the American dream gone wrong. It's a tale of ambition twisted into criminality, of talent wasted on illegal enterprise, and of choices that destroyed countless lives across the United States. Born on June 21, 1968 in Detroit, Michigan, Big Meech would grow to become one of the most notorious drug traffickers in modern American history, co-founding the Black Mafia Family, an organization that poisoned communities and left a trail of devastation in its wake. Before we dive deeper into this story, I want to connect with you. Where are you watching this from right now? Are you in the United States, somewhere in Latin America, Europe, or elsewhere in the world? Drop your location in the comments below, and if you're finding this content valuable, please hit that like button. It really helps us continue bringing you these deep dive investigations into stories that shaped our culture, for better or worse. Detroit in the 1970s and 80s was a city facing profound economic challenges. The automotive industry that had built the city's prosperity was declining, leaving neighborhoods struggling and young people with limited opportunities. But economic hardship is never an excuse for the path that Demetrius Flenory and his brother Terry Lee, Southwest T. Flenory, chose. In the late 1980s, while still in high school, the brothers made a conscious decision to enter the drug trade, starting with small $50 packages of cocaine sold on Detroit streets under the name 50 Boys. This wasn't a story of desperation or lack of alternatives. This was a calculated choice to pursue wealth through means that would destroy families, fuel addiction, and contribute to the cycle of violence plaguing urban communities. What started as street-level dealing quickly evolved into something far more sinister. The Flenory brothers weren't content with small-time operations. They had ambition, but they channeled it into building an empire of suffering. By the year 2000, the Black Mafia Family had metastasized into a massive criminal enterprise with more than 500 members. The scale of their operation was staggering and deeply troubling. They distributed thousands of kilograms of cocaine across 12 states: Alabama, California, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, North Carolina, Ohio, and Tennessee. Each kilogram represented countless lives affected by addiction, families torn apart, and communities destabilized. The BMF operated with a sophisticated structure that would be impressive if it weren't so destructive. Big Meech managed operations from Atlanta, serving as the distribution hub, while his brother Terry oversaw the Los Angeles operations, which handled drug shipments. They established direct connections with Mexican drug cartels, becoming a crucial link in the chain that brought poison into American communities. Their alliances extended to various street gangs, including the Folk Nation, which encompassed the Gangster Disciples and Black Disciples, as well as the Crips and Zoe Pound. What made Big Meech particularly notable and particularly reckless was his ostentatious lifestyle. While many successful criminals attempt to maintain a low profile, Big Meech flaunted his wealth. He threw lavish parties, wore expensive jewelry, drove luxury vehicles, and cultivated a celebrity image. This wasn't just about enjoying ill-gotten gains. It was about ego and status, built on a foundation of human misery. His brother Terry was more discreet, understanding that such displays attracted unwanted attention. But Big Meech's appetite for the spotlight would eventually contribute to their downfall. In the early 2000s, Big Meech attempted to legitimize his image and launder his drug money by founding BMF Entertainment. This record label and promotion company served as a front for cleaning the proceeds from cocaine distribution. Between 2000 and 2005, the BMF generated more than $270 million in illegal revenue. That's $270 million built on addiction, violence, and the destruction of human potential. BMF Entertainment promoted artists like Blue Da Vinci, whose real name is Barima McKnight, and associated with major figures in hip-hop, including Sean Combs, known as P. Diddy, as well as Trina, T.I., Jay-Z, Young Jeezy, and Fabulous. The track, Streets on Lock, even received award nominations. This infiltration of the legitimate music industry represents one of the most insidious aspects of the BMF story. They weren't just trafficking drugs, they were using culture itself as a vehicle for money laundering and image rehabilitation. The relationship between BMF and hip-hop culture created a dangerous mythology. Young people in struggling communities saw Big Meech as a success story rather than a cautionary tale. The glamorization of drug dealing through music videos, lyrics, and celebrity associations normalized criminal behavior and made the drug trade seem like a viable path to success. This cultural impact may have been even more damaging than the direct effects of their drug distribution, as it inspired countless others to follow a similar destructive path. The BMF wasn't just about drug distribution and money laundering. Between 2003 and 2005, the organization was linked to numerous acts of violence, including shootings and murders. In November 2003, a shooting occurred at Club Chaos in Atlanta. Big Meech was arrested in connection with the incident, but was never indicted. In September 2004, the organization was connected to multiple executions. These weren't business disputes. These were human lives ended, families destroyed, and communities traumatized. The violence associated with BMF extended beyond direct confrontations. The cocaine they distributed fueled addiction that led to property crime, domestic violence, and the breakdown of family structures. Children grew up in homes devastated by drug abuse. Parents lost their ability to care for their families. The ripple effects of their criminal enterprise touched every corner of the communities where they operated. In 2003, tension between the brothers reached a breaking point. Terry moved to Los Angeles, and a rift developed between the siblings. Even within their criminal organization, trust broke down and conflict emerged. This internal division would make them more vulnerable to law enforcement. But it also highlighted how criminal enterprises, no matter how successful they appear, are ultimately built on unstable foundations of greed, violence, and betrayal. The beginning of the end for the Black Mafia family came on October 28, 2003, when the Drug Enforcement Administration launched Operation Motor City Mafia. This multi-year investigation employed wiretaps, confidential informants, and traditional investigative techniques to build a comprehensive case against the organization. In April 2004, law enforcement seized 95 kilograms of cocaine, just one of many interdictions that began to dismantle the BMF's supply chain. The investigation revealed the true scope of the organization's operations. Federal agents documented the distribution of massive quantities of cocaine, the laundering of hundreds of millions of dollars, and connections to violent crimes across multiple states. The evidence was overwhelming. Built patiently over years of surveillance and intelligence gathering, law enforcement officials from multiple agencies coordinated their efforts, demonstrating that no criminal organization, no matter how sophisticated, is beyond the reach of justice. In October 2005, the hammer fell. 30 members of the BMF, including both Flenory brothers, were arrested in a coordinated operation. Law enforcement seized approximately $3 million in cash, 2.5 kilograms of cocaine, and numerous firearms. The arrests represented the culmination of years of investigative work and sent a clear message. The lifestyle Big Meech had so proudly displayed on social media and in public was coming to an end. The charges against the Flenory brothers were serious and extensive. They faced conspiracy to distribute more than 5 kilograms of cocaine, possession with intent to distribute, and money laundering under the Continuing Criminal Enterprise Statute, often called the Kingpin Statute. This wasn't a case of minor drug possession or a single mistake. These were charges reflecting years of deliberate, large-scale criminal activity that had devastating effects on communities across America. We're back with the second part of this deep investigation into the Black Mafia family and Demetrius Big Meech Flenory. If you're just joining us, welcome. Before we continue, I want to hear from you again. Where in the world are you watching this from? What's your perspective on stories like this? Drop a comment below and smash that like button if you're finding this content informative. Your engagement helps us continue producing these in-depth examinations of the stories that shaped modern culture. In November 2007, both Demetrius and Terry Flenory made the decision to plead guilty to the charges against them. This wasn't an admission made lightly or quickly. They faced overwhelming evidence, wiretapped conversations, testimony from cooperating witnesses, seized drugs and money, and a paper trail of their criminal enterprise that stretched across more than a decade. The plea represented an acknowledgement of guilt for crimes that had devastated countless lives. The sentencing came in September 2008. Both brothers received 30 years in federal prison. 30 years. That's 3 decades behind bars, a significant portion of any person's life. But consider what that sentence represents. Accountability for distributing thousands of kilograms of cocaine, for laundering hundreds of millions of dollars, for contributing to violence and addiction across 12 states, and for poisoning communities that are still recovering from the epidemic of crack cocaine that the BMF helped fuel. The investigation and prosecutions didn't stop with the Flenory brothers. By 2009, approximately 150 individuals associated with the Black Mafia family had been arrested and faced federal charges. This wasn't just about taking down 2 leaders. It was about dismantling an entire criminal infrastructure. Each arrest represented another individual who had chosen to participate in an organization that profited from human suffering. Each prosecution was a step toward justice for the communities that had been harmed. Life in federal prison was a dramatic change from the luxury and excess that Big Meech had displayed during his criminal career. Gone were the parties, the jewelry, the expensive cars, and the celebrity status. Instead, he faced the reality of incarceration, limited freedom, strict rules, and separation from family and the outside world. But even in prison, Big Meech struggled with following rules and accepting responsibility for his actions. In 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic created health concerns in prisons across the country, Terry Flenory was granted compassionate release to home confinement on May 5, 2020, due to health issues and the pandemic risk. Big Meech also sought similar relief, but his requests were denied. Why? Because he had repeatedly violated prison rules. He had been caught with contraband, including cell phones, weapons, and drugs. Even behind bars, he continued to break the rules. Additionally, he had promoted himself on social media as a kingpin, showing a lack of genuine remorse or understanding of the harm he had caused. This pattern of behavior is significant. It demonstrates that Big Meech's time in prison wasn't initially used for reflection and personal growth. Instead, he continued to embrace the identity that had led to his downfall. He continued to see himself as a celebrity criminal, rather than as someone who needed to fundamentally change his perspective and take responsibility for the damage he had caused. The denial of his early release requests was entirely justified based on this behavior. However, according to his attorney Brittany K. Barnett, Big Meech eventually did begin to demonstrate personal growth during his incarceration. Whether this change was genuine or strategic, only time will tell. What matters is that he served a significant portion of his sentence, and that his release came through proper legal channels, not through manipulation or special treatment. On October 16, 2024, Big Meech was released from prison, though not to complete freedom. He was transferred to a residential re-entry program in Miami, Florida, a halfway house that provides supervision and support for individuals transitioning back into society. His complete release from supervision is scheduled for January 27, 2026. His brother Terry is in a similar program in Detroit, with his full release date set for August 17, 2025. Almost immediately after his release, Big Meech began planning a return to the public spotlight. He announced the BMF Big Meech Welcome Back Legacy Concert, scheduled for February 13, 2025, at the Amarant Bank Arena in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The concert was set to feature prominent hip-hop artists, including Rick Ross, Lil Baby, 21 Savage, Moneybagg Yo, and Sexy Red. The event raised important questions. Is this a celebration of a reformed individual trying to rebuild his life, or is it a glorification of a criminal past? Is Big Meech truly committed to positive change, or is he simply rebranding the same image that contributed to his downfall? Then came allegations that threatened to destroy whatever reputation Big Meech had left in criminal circles. In 2025, Curtis 50 Cent Jackson publicly accused Big Meech of cooperating with law enforcement. According to these allegations, Big Meech had worked with authorities through an informant named Tammy Cowens to reduce his sentence. In the criminal world, there are few accusations more damaging than being labeled an informant or a snitch. Big Meech vehemently denied these allegations, stating, "Death before dishonor." But the accusation itself revealed the fundamental hypocrisy of the criminal lifestyle he had led. The very code that criminals claim to live by, loyalty and silence, is routinely violated when individuals face serious prison time. The question isn't whether Big Meech cooperated with authorities, but rather why anyone would expect loyalty from an organization built on illegal activity, violence, and the exploitation of vulnerable communities. What's particularly notable is that BMF criminal activity didn't end with the Flenory brothers' arrests. The organization continued operations after 2005, with law enforcement making additional arrests related to BMF activity as recently as 2023. This demonstrates that the organization Big Meech built had a life of its own, continuing to harm communities long after its founders were imprisoned. The legacy of BMF isn't just about two brothers. It's about a criminal culture that persisted and inspired others to follow the same destructive path. Perhaps one of the most troubling aspects of the Big Meech story is how it has been packaged and sold as entertainment. On September 26, 2021, the Starz network premiered BMF, a television series about the Black Mafia family produced by Curtis 50 Cent Jackson. The show featured Big Meech's own son, Demetrius Flenory Jr., known as Lil Meech, playing his father. Actor Da Vinci portrayed Terry Flenory. The series ran for 4 seasons, with the final season premiering on June 6, 2025, and concluding on August 15, 2025, with the episode titled Dreams Deferred. The show explored themes of family loyalty and portrayed the Flenory brothers' criminal enterprise as a twisted version of the American dream. While the series may have attempted to show both the rise and the consequences of the BMF, there's an inherent problem in dramatizing real criminal activity that caused genuine harm to real people. On October 29, 2025, Starz announced the cancellation of BMF due to declining viewership in the 4th season and increasing production costs. Despite initially strong numbers across multiple platforms, the audience couldn't sustain the show's expensive production. A public dispute between 50 Cent and Big Meech did not influence the cancellation decision, though 50 Cent has hinted at possible spin-offs, including something called BMF Immortal, and a documentary featuring Terry Flenory. The cultural impact of both the real BMF and its televised dramatization cannot be understated. Big Meech remains an iconic figure in hip-hop culture, symbolizing the intersection of crime and entertainment. But we must ask ourselves, what message does this send? When we turn drug dealers into television heroes, when we cast their children to play them in glamorized retellings of their crimes, when we celebrate their release from prison with concerts featuring major recording artists, are we truly holding them accountable? Or are we contributing to a culture that romanticizes criminal behavior and makes it seem like a viable path to success? Throughout this entire story, it's crucial that we never lose sight of the real victims, the communities destroyed by cocaine addiction, the families torn apart by violence, the young people who saw Big Meech as a role model and followed him into lives of crime, and the countless individuals whose lives were derailed by the drugs that the BMF distributed. Every kilogram of cocaine that the Black Mafia family moved represented human suffering. It represented parents who couldn't care for their children because of addiction. It represented teenagers who dropped out of school to sell drugs because they saw criminals like Big Meech living in luxury. It represented violence in neighborhoods that were already struggling with poverty and limited opportunities. It represented a cycle of destruction that continues to affect communities decades later. The $270 million that BMF generated wasn't created out of thin air. It was extracted from communities that could least afford it, from individuals who spent their limited resources feeding addictions rather than supporting their families. From a society that bears the cost of treating addiction, incarcerating criminals, and trying to rebuild communities devastated by the drug trade, the story of Big Meech and the Black Mafia family should serve as a cautionary tale, not as inspiration. Yes, the Flenory brothers demonstrated intelligence, ambition, and organizational skills, but they channeled those abilities into activities that caused immeasurable harm. Imagine what they could have accomplished if they had applied that same intelligence and ambition to legitimate business, to community development, to creating opportunities rather than destroying them. The economic challenges facing Detroit in the 1970s and 80s were real. Many young people in those communities faced limited opportunities, but thousands of young people facing those same challenges made different choices. They worked legitimate jobs, pursued education, started legal businesses, and contributed positively to their communities. Economic hardship does not inevitably lead to crime. Crime is a choice, and the Flenory brothers chose to build an empire on human suffering rather than finding legitimate paths to success. The justice system worked in this case. Law enforcement agencies coordinated a complex, multi-year investigation. Prosecutors built a strong case based on evidence. The courts delivered appropriate sentences. Big Meech and Terry Flenory were held accountable for their actions. They served significant time in prison. This is how the system is supposed to work. Criminal behavior has consequences, and those consequences are enforced. As Big Meech transitions back into society, the question now is whether he will use his platform and his story to warn others away from the path he took, or whether he will continue to profit from glorifying a criminal past. Will he speak to young people about the reality of prison, about the lives destroyed by drugs, about the emptiness of material wealth gained through illegal means? Or will he continue to cultivate an image as a kingpin and a celebrity criminal? The story of Demetrius, Big Meech Flenory, is ultimately a tragedy. It's a tragedy of wasted potential, of choices that led to destruction rather than creation, of talent and intelligence applied to causing harm rather than building something positive. It's a tragedy for the communities that suffered because of BMF's activities, for the families torn apart by addiction and violence, and for the young people who saw Big Meech as someone to emulate rather than someone to learn from as a cautionary tale. As we close this examination of Big Meech and the Black Mafia family, let's remember that real life isn't a television drama. Crime doesn't lead to happy endings. The luxury, the parties, the celebrity associations, all of it came at a terrible cost, and that cost was paid not by Big Meech, but by the communities that suffered from his organization's activities. His 30-year sentence was justice, not persecution. His time in prison was accountability, not victimhood. The true legacy of Big Meech should be this: crime doesn't pay, not in any meaningful sense. It may provide temporary material wealth, but it comes at the cost of freedom, reputation, peace of mind, and ultimately human dignity. Every young person who looks at Big Meech's story and sees success rather than failure, who sees a role model rather than a cautionary tale, is in danger of making the same destructive choices that led to his downfall. We can hope that Big Meech has genuinely changed, that his time in prison led to real reflection and growth, and that he will use whatever platform he has to discourage others from following his path. But hope is not enough. Actions matter more than words, and only time will tell whether Big Meech's story ends in genuine redemption or simply in another chapter of glorifying criminal behavior. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the story of Big Meech and the Black Mafia family. If you found this content valuable, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth investigations into the stories that shape our culture. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on this story, and let's continue this important conversation about crime, accountability, and the messages we send to the next generation.